Situated at 6,200 feet above sea level and 2 miles north from the town of Darjeeling, Mount Hermon School was founded in 1895 under the principalship of Miss Emma L. Knowles. On the 11th of March 1895, the school opened with 13 students. Originally named Arcadia, the school was situated just below the Chaurasta in Darjeeling town itself. After the Darjeeling disaster of 1898, which caused severe damage to the school building, the school was moved to a new site near the Darjeeling railway station. This was done in 1902 when the enrollment had reached 50 students. That year, the school was rechristened as Queen's Hill School. In 1918, Miss Stahl took over as the new principal of the school. The total enrollment then was 163. It was the charisma and determination of Miss Stahl and Bishop F.B. Fisher from the episcopacy of the Calcutta area that helped the establishment of the present main building on the Mount Hermon estate. On the 5th of June 1924, Her Excellency, the Countess of Lytton, laid the foundation stone in the new school premises, and consequently in 1930, the school was renamed Mount Hermon School, by which it is known even today. As the school grew in its new surroundings, the need was felt to enlarge its scope into a complete co-educational school. As a result, a separate hostel area was provided for senior boys, which till today is known as Fernhill. Mr. H.E. Dewey became the principal of the school in 1948. During his stay, the main playing field and gymnasium were made. The swimming pool constructed in 1960 was inspired by the energy and enthusiasm of Reverend D.G. Stewart.
Oh, I remember how my wife and I came up in the train to Siliguri, and then we seemed to be coming further and further up the hills in the Jeep with Bill Jones, who introduced us to the school, seeing tea for the first time, and then we came finally to Darjeeling and came down here, and I was so impressed by this beautiful building. I really hadn't held any picture of how wonderful a building we would meet in Mount Hermon. Well, for the boys, the main seasons were football and hockey and athletics. When I first came, there was no cricket, and I am no cricketer, so I couldn't help develop that. But Mr. Murray came and joined me on the staff a year later, and he, of course, was an expert cricketer, so cricketer went up. But I was particularly interested in football. I had played a little football back in Australia, so I knew something about it, so I really made sure I knew all the rules so that I could referee a lot of games. And that first year, 1954, I coached the school football team, and they were a great bunch. And they really, it wasn't that I was a good coach, but they really worked hard. And we had a competition in those days called the Bandari Shield between all the schools of Darjeeling and of Kurseong. We didn't have Kalimpong in, but we had Darjeeling and Kurseong, and all those boys' schools joined together, and in 1954, for the first year ever, Mount Hermon won the Shield.
The Stewart Building was built in 1963. Over the next 2 decades, through interaction and competition with other renowned schools like St. Paul's and St. Joseph's, Mount Hermon established itself as one of the best schools in the region. It is during this time that the Teachers Training College at Mount Hermon Estate commenced in April 1972 under the dynamic principalship of Mr. G.A. Murray.
I think that a lot of people remember me for sport, and my wife for music. And our sport, particularly cricket and football, and the music and the musicals and those sort of activities, those were things that the students remember most of all, because we did some wonderful musicals. We took the choir on trips to Calcutta and Shillong and Kalimpong, and we had good success in things like the Edinburgh Shield and in some of the local football competitions. So it was a great time for all those sort of activities. But there was also tremendous improvement in academic progress, which had been started in Mr. Stewart's time. I should say that I taught school certificate English in my first year at Mount Hermon. We had, I think, 9 or 10 students in the class, and they all failed. So nobody passed school certificate in my first year. So we weren't doing too well in academics in the 1950s when Mr. Stewart first came. But we all worked hard, and that began to change. And there were several years where we had 100% pass in school certificate. And Mr. Stewart also introduced, and I continued, the Cambridge Higher School Certificate, so that students stayed on for 2 years. And some of those students went on to American and English universities. A couple went to Cambridge to study, and to universities in Australia and New Zealand, straight from Mount Hermon.
Reverend J.A. Johnston took over the mantle in 1979 as principal. Reverend Johnston was instrumental in sustaining the Mount Hermon spirit in the midst of various political uncertainties of the late 80s and early 90s. Besides the general academic accomplishments, the school continued to excel in music, drama, and sports during this era.
Well, I think Mount Hermon was and is a Christian school. Now, by that we don't mean that all our students are Christian, of course not, nor all the teachers, but it was founded on Christian principles, and I think that gave the school a lot of its character. And I believe our emphasis on the need for boys and girls to grow up with ideals of godliness, of faithfulness, of honesty, of integrity, of love, of being caring people for each other, seeking to help those who are not so fortunate, seeking to help those who are in need, and being brothers to everybody else, no matter what their race or what their religion.
Well, it's one of the few co-educational boarding schools. Dr. Graham's Homes is another, but throughout India, and especially in those days, there were not many co-educational boarding schools, and many Indian parents in particular were a bit scared in the sense of sending their daughters in particular to a co-educational school. But that is really one of the special things about Mount Hermon. The school was a very special place in terms of friendship. And I think that was because, even in my time, a high proportion of the staff had come here because they felt they had a special calling to come. They were from overseas and also from other parts of India. But this was a school which tried to have that Christian emphasis on love and sharing and caring for each other. So we tried very hard to make everybody feel at home.
I was very pleased to speak with Mona Pokral this morning, and of course she was very close to us, as were all those group of girls and boys. And we were just asking who's married, what they're all doing, and not one of the marriages is broken up. And she said, you know, it's so good that we've all gone right through our studies, and many of them have married, and she said all the marriages have gone well, and she said we're all happy.
That's a very nice aspect of Mount Hermon as a co-educational school, that in places now where people are very wary of having boys and girls together because of any danger of misbehaviour and that sort of thing, in all 30 years that I had to do with the school, there was never any hint of that. And in contrary, we've got, I think it's 23 fairs now that began friendships at school and now are married and are Mount Hermon marriages.
Mount Hermon School completed 100 years of existence on March 11th, 1995. To mark this occasion, the school authorities put up a 10-day celebration program which was held between the 13th and 23rd of November 1995. The celebrations were inaugurated by His Excellency Shri K.V. Raghunath Reddy, Governor of Bengal and Sikkim, and attended by many other dignitaries including Mrs. Kiran Bedi and the Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh, among others. The celebration also attracted hundreds of ex-students and teachers from all over the world. The school also witnessed the unprecedented simultaneous presence of its three most popular principals, namely Mr. and Mrs. Stewart, Mr. and Mrs. Murray, and Mr. and Mrs. Johnston, who came all the way from New Zealand and Australia to honor the occasion. The celebrations were aptly concluded with the school song, which ended with the words, "Hail Mount Hermon, hail Mount Hermon, praise and love be ever thine."
I remember meeting a Chinese boy from Thailand when he was a student at Berkeley University in America. And he met us there. He was working. He'd finished his studies at Berkeley, which is a very good university. And the thing he told us was that he remembered how he was a small 10-year-old Chinese boy who'd never been in a cold climate before. And he came to Mount Hermon in February, and he was cold, and he was homesick, and he was miserable. And Mrs. Murray took him into our house and gave him a hot cup of tea as soon as he arrived. And he never forgot that. That was his first impression of Mount Hermon, that here was a kind lady who gave him a hot cup of tea and made him feel welcome.
So I remember the old Mochi, whose son is here now. Of course, Sister Digby, who looked after all the servants. And old Kancharai, who had half his shop where the boys used to bunk sometimes. And the boxy wallah that used to sit down on the mochis, and the boys used to creep out and buy from him. Then he'd go over beyond the swimming pool and hide in the bushes, and the boys would go there. And old Minton, who looked after the hostel. And, of course, the sweepers, Laskari, the head sweeper, and Chailu, all of those now have gone. So it's quite sad to come back. And yet, it's very gratifying because their children and grandchildren still remember us, and they've all been coming down to this house and meet us on the road. And it's been very warm, heartening, shall we say, to find that they do in fact remember us.
Second memory, and that's also been reinforced by coming here, is the people of Darjeeling. I mean, I walk down the street and even some of the coolies and the taxi drivers, they welcome me and ask me how I am and remember me. I used to play goalkeeper in soccer, and I always remember I came back from a year's leave in early 1970. We'd been away for a year, and we stopped for a cup of tea in Kurseong, and I heard one taxi driver say to the other taxi driver, "Hamra golki aaya," our goalkeeper has come. And that was in Kurseong, not in Darjeeling. So that's a great memory, which I treasure.
Well, the thing that's come to my mind this year, this time I've been here, is the fact that we have only one life to live. And I'm very satisfied to look back over the long association that's made Mount Hermon virtually the real core of our life, certainly of our life together, that has made Mount Hermon a worthwhile enterprise to be involved with. And we're very grateful for it.
I've actually spent longer in India than I have anywhere else in the world. and this is our home. And it was great to come home. And I guess we'd always think of this as home. And our own 5 children always think of this as home. And that, I think, is the feeling of most people that have been at Mount Hermon. So I say, hail Mount Hermon.
Long live Mount Hermon.
My daughter, Bronwyn, who left this morning to go back to Germany, she said that what she has realized while she's been back here for a few days, she's realized that although she's a New Zealander, and though she now lives in Germany with a German husband, she said there's only one place in the world that I can really call home, and that's Darjeeling. Because she was born in Darjeeling, of course. But other children who spent 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years here, this was their childhood home. And you never forget your childhood home, even if you come from Bihar or wherever. Still, if you're in a boarding school for those so many years, it's your childhood home.
We had some wonderful treks. I went on the treks. I was much better able to get up and down the hills in those days because I was a young man when I came here. I was just 30 when I reached Darjeeling.
I played table tennis with them.
Yes, and we had the cooking every Sunday night, and sometimes they'd come in for coffee, and they were very enjoyable years. Yes, yes.
And the social life and the music life of the school. It's hard to pick out one or two things because they were all wonderful as far as we were concerned.
Well, Mount Hermon was always top on my list because we felt that our children had got the best of 2 worlds, school as well as home in Mount Hermon School.
The schools in Calcutta can never come up to such standards in music and dramatics.
Mount Hermon really won a name for itself during those years for the major productions that we did. Everybody came to see. The hall was packed for 4 or 5 nights of the week.
Well, my most memorable moment should be my meeting my wife, because I met my wife in Mount Hermon School in 1977, 78 we were courting, and in 89 we got married. She was also a Hermonite, and she studied here from the 60s. So she has been related to the school for the last 30 years or so. So that was a very memorable moment for me, and very satisfying too.
Well, when I came in 1954, I thought we needed to have a swimming pool. And I picked out the site just below the playing field there, and I thought this would be just the place. It'd get lots of sun, and after about 3 weeks, it looked beautiful. And then we opened the pool, and it's been a wonderful adjunct to Mount Hermon.
We actually went home. We stayed home for 1978. But once you've been in Mount Hermon, you've got to come back. And in 1979, we were here again for another 10 years.
I would always come back to Mount Hermon School.
When I first came here, I felt much drawn towards Kerala, and I felt the difference, the cultural difference between the north and the south. But after being here for 20 years, I feel this is my home, and Kerala is an alien place to me. In fact, I only go home for a week or 2 weeks now. I feel more comfortable in Darjeeling. Darjeeling has become my home, really.
The work at school does continue after the students have left.
Yeah.
And that the school motto really is true. Not for school, but for life we learn.
Because the school is not here for the staff, and the school is not here for the principal. The school is here for the kids. And so the kids' needs come first.